All right. Good morning, everybody. Oh, you cannot see me if I don't do that. Let me just turn on the light. Okay. Okay, so good morning, everybody. 12 people for now, so not so many. That's the last session of this week. We are on Friday, of course, so nothing tomorrow, nothing on Sunday. And then we will meet again 3 times next week. So what we have done up to now, we have introduced NLP and deep learning in a broad manner. Then we have discussed spell checking as one component of natural language processing. We are mostly focusing on text. Then we had a practice session where we started to build a spell checker based on skeleton keys. One of the things we had introduced in the during the second session. Then we continued the practice a little bit yesterday. Then I told you about the processing of syntax. And I told you that you have now pretty good tools to do that in R, but also in other languages. And I showed you one of them, which is UDPipe. And it's nice because you can use different, you can work in different languages, not all languages, but it's getting better slowly. You can work in these different languages. And if you provide 1, 2, 3, 1 million sentences, it can analyze automatically these sentences, not always perfectly, but it can give you a syntactic analysis of the sentence. And it can also tell you about the lemma. So the kind of dictionary forms of the words that you have in the sentences. So we will see quite soon how we can, why is it interesting to have these elements, and especially why it's interesting to have the lemmas. But before we do that, we have to consider what we call text curation. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell you more about this for the first part of our session. And then you can try to practice a little bit with regular expressions. And then maybe next Monday we can also play a little bit more with them as well. So let me share my screen. So everything is recorded as usual. So if I share my screen, let me see. Share screen. All right. I'm doing this. I take the chat window so I can see your questions if you have some of them. Yesterday, I uploaded the solution to the activity, the R code, and I have uploaded earlier today. I have uploaded this slide, so you can find them in the Google Drive as well. It's number 4, text curation. So what I want to do today is introduce a little bit further text mining, but we won't discuss spell checking again, and the text curation, so that how you can curate, how you can clean your text before starting to work further with it, before starting to analyze it. And I will tell you a number of things about that. So that's what we can do for the first 2 hours. And then we can try to practice if everything goes fine. That's the idea. Sounds good? Are you with me? So that's the plan for today. And then we can rest for 2 days. Is it okay? How many people now? Okay, 17 people. So people are coming slowly. All right. So the starting point for today are the following questions. How can we extract the meaning of sentences and text in an automatic manner? What does that mean exactly, the meaning? That's a good question, but what can we try to do with this respect? Oh, sorry. All right. How well and how much can we extract? So that's related to the first question. And then connected to that, of course, what are the different tools and techniques which are available? So the point is to cover all these things, not only today actually, but today and on Monday. So there is some sort of pipelines. There are a number of steps, of stages that you kind of need to follow when you do text mining, also known as text analytics. So this is what we are going to cover in this lecture and in the following ones. And there are a range of complementary techniques so that you can extract some information from text documents. So different techniques, and you may apply them one after the other. What you could say is that you really have the analysis proper, and then you have the preparation of the documents for this analysis. And that's what we may call text curation. That is actually what you do in data science, data mining as well. Before you can start to apply statistical models or all kinds of techniques, PCA, regression, modeling, all kinds of things, deep learning methods, whatever. First, you need to collect the data. You need to clean them. You need to process them so that they are ready to be analyzed. If you don't curate your data well, then your analysis will be applied to material which is not that well suited, not that good. And of course, you don't want that. So it's exactly the same when you play with text rather than numbers. So in this lecture, we are going to introduce text mining, and we are going to describe some aspects of text curation. Then in the second lecture, I can tell you about a number of classical approaches in text mining, like topic modeling, sentiment analysis. These are the main ones, but maybe a little bit of stilistics, stylometric, these kind of things. And then I can tell you, this is a bit more sophisticated, but I can tell you about more recent approaches to text mining, the approaches which involve deep learning in particular. This is more technical. This is much harder to practice with these things unless you have some good command of deep learning and Python or R, but at least we can illustrate maybe. So at the end of this lecture, you will be able to describe text mining and some of its applications. Why do text mining? What can we do with that? You will be able to enumerate various sources of data for text mining. Where are places where you can find text that could be interesting to analyze? You will be able to apply simple regular expressions, or regex for short, to extract and modify text patterns in a document. And you will be able to reflect on some ethical aspects of text mining. So these are the things we are going to cover. I think Monday we will practice more with regular expressions. We will start today, but without using R. And next Monday, I think we will spend more time and using R so that you get more practice. So today we start gently, and then we push further on Monday. And then we can see further. So first, I will try to define what is text mining. Then I will tell you about some possible applications. I will tell you, because it's important, about ethical considerations, the kind of pitfalls, the kind of dangers that are lurking under the surface in a way. I'll tell you about some data sources for text mining, and then I'll tell you how you can clean and prepare text data. So these are the 5 sections for today's lecture. The takeaway messages is what I've just told you a few minutes ago, is that if you want to do text analytics, first you need to curate your sources. You need to find the right documents to analyze, given your question, given you the topic you want to investigate. You have online data sets. You may have paper documents that you digitize. And basically, you prepare them, you acquire them, and you prepare them for further analysis. So maybe you start from one format, which is not very good, not conducive to analysis, to another one, which is better suited. For instance, when you read a page online, you may read something written in HTML. So you see something, but actually the raw document, if it's an HTML file, you would see that there are a number of tags, there are a number of markers. And when you analyze a text with topic modeling or sentiment analysis, you don't want to have these markers. So that's what I mean, that sometimes you may have something that is not exactly ready. Also, another takeaway message is that there are data sources all around us. They are very abundant. There are many places where you can find text data. You should not find them for the sake of doing text mining, but for a number of things you would like to work on, you may be able to find related documents and you could analyze these text documents. That's what I mean. Once again, it's very important to do good text curation. The point is that it's time consuming. It can be time consuming if you want to do it well, and if your initial documents are not in a very good shape, and it's not the most exciting part of text mining. But if you don't do it well, then your analysis won't be as good as it could be. And if you have clean documents, conversely, then you will discover more interesting stuff. In particular, when it comes to kind of preparing your text once you have them on your computer, regular expressions are a very powerful tool to do a number of operations on your text. Or also, if you want to make queries about the content of this text, of this document, regular expressions, once again, are pretty good, pretty useful. So regular expressions, I will introduce them in the last part of this lecture. They are a tool both for actually preliminary curation and later on for analysis. They are very useful. As soon as you deal with text, I think regular expressions will come into play. Not for everything, but let's say quite often. Okay, so that's the plan for the next hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes. That's what I want to cover with you so that you have better ideas, and then we can route all of this into more practice. First thing first, text mining. Can we define this a bit more precisely? So I have told you that before, and you knew that. I didn't have to tell you, but every day the amount of data available increases dramatically, and that includes the amount of text. So every day, more and more and more texts become available online, but actually also offline. Think of all the newspapers on our planet in the like 200 something countries on the globe. And every day, if you have daily newspapers, you will have more and more and more news articles and more text. And books are published and short stories and this and that and reports. So it's really, really massive. You have, of course, online websites of all kinds, which are constantly updated, where new documents are added and become available for download. You have social media, of course, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And there is a lot of content, text content that is released every day. You have the regular medias, okay? So newspapers, for instance. So that's a lot. That's the number of different sources. And I would say, you could say that's a very valuable asset. For private companies to extract information in all these documents can be very, very good. Especially if like Facebook or Google, how you make money is by selling ads, targeted ads to users, and you text mine what your users post on your services to try to better understand who they are and to propose them to buy more stuff. You might not find this the greatest thing for mankind, but that's actually what private companies do, right? Try to earn money. If they can earn more money by analyzing your data, they will do so. It's also very good for scholars, okay? Because for scholars, if you can take advantage of all these documents, these are places where you can learn something. And you can think of many things here. So what is at stake? What is at play is the ability, the possibility to extract meaning, to extract information from this text. But what I've told you earlier is that it's not like numbers, okay? It's not like a data table. It's not like an Excel file with columns of numbers or things like male, female, or a place of birth or something else. It is structured information in the sense that you still have words coming one after the others, but it's also not completely structured actually. And I mean, it takes a number of processing steps to get it in the shape where you can do additional things. So it's not completely impossible, but it's not super simple at the same time. So what do we call text mining? It's the same as text data mining, is the same as text analytics. So this is this process of extracting, of deriving high quality information. Low quality is not that good, right? So high quality is better. High quality information from text. This can take different forms. And the information you need, what you want to extract ultimately from the text, it depends on your task, on what you want to achieve. And when you think that you have news articles and books and blog posts and social media messages and this and that, there is a generic term that we may use. We may use the term document. A document is a piece of text of any size, whether it's online or offline, whatever the content more specifically, a piece of text, we can commonly call this a document. So text mining is about deriving high quality information from a set of documents or a single document. It could be a small one, or it could be a large one. So that's a possible definition. If you want to extract information from text, you need to analyze the text. A little bit like what we have done with syntactic processing yesterday. So that's, you need to process the content at the linguistic level. I mean, it's language, right? It's text. It's written in a specific language. This language has rules. And if you want to extract something interesting, very intuitively, very likely, you need to rely on these rules to some extent. And that's why we need, at some point at least, to have some language models. That is some knowledge about the language itself. Could be English, could be Swahili, could be Spanish, could be Cantonese, like in Hong Kong. If you have this knowledge, then you are one step further toward understanding what is being told with words. So this is some sort of generic knowledge that then you can apply to specific sentences, specific documents, specific topics. There are different approaches. You may consider words in isolation. That may be the simplest way. Then you might consider words as they appear together. And then you have models like n-grams. Or you can go even further and try to represent the meaning of sentences and stuff. And that's when maybe you are looking to deep learning to help you, something like that. Let me write something before I forget about that. Okay. So, okay, text mining, extracting information. But what you want to extract, it depends on the task. I told you that. There are actually many different tasks that you may think of. The same like in natural language processing, you have different subfields. If you think of text mining proper, which is one of the subfields of NLP, then you have quite a number of different tasks. Maybe you have different documents and you have different categories for these documents, and you want to put any document into one of your categories. That's text categorization, or if you remember what I told you about the different approaches in machine learning, clustering, regression, and classification. So text categorization is the same as a text classification. It's different from text clustering. You have a number of documents and you want to group them into groups, into clusters, into categories, but these categories, they are not predefined. So that's the difference with text categorization or text classification. Or maybe you have a large document and you would like to be able to automatically provide a short summary of this document. That's something some people try to do. We call that document summarization. Maybe you have a document and you want to automatically extract named entities. So you want to extract the names of the people, of some organizations, of some places, like the name of a city or of a country, the name of political of people, people involved in politics, people involved in arts, in sports, in business, whatever. So when you are looking for what we call named entities, the subtask, the task of text mining is called named entity recognition. That's something you may be willing to do. Or maybe you want to do something more. You want to learn the relationships between the named entities. Then there is a subtask that is called entity relation modeling. You try to model the relations between the entities, the named entities. Or maybe you want to be able to identify and extract sentiments, a little bit like emotions, but people usually, they don't say emotion analysis, they say rather sentiment analysis. And quite commonly when people think of sentiment, it's either positive or negative, basically. And it can be, in some cases, very positive, like 0, negative, very negative. You may have like a 5-point scale, or you may have something continuous, or you may just have 3 things like positive, negative, neutral. It depends. But emotions, moods, whether what is written is rather sad or rather optimistic or rather this or rather that. So when you try that, and that's a very important aspect of text mining in today, that's what we call sentiment analysis. So you see document summarization and sentiment analysis, they actually do quite, I mean, the 2 tasks are quite distinct, they are quite different. And you will not approach them with exactly the same algorithms. So it's a field that is actually quite diverse in terms of what you may try to do. I've told you yesterday, if you remember, of some ambiguities we could have with language. 2 pairs of pairs, or le boucher sale la tranche, this French example, which can be interpreted in 2 very different ways. Let me show you some others. And what I want you to understand is that all these things are challenges when it comes to text mining. You can have lexical ambiguities. I bought myself 2 apples for tea time. 2 apples, here very likely, because it's tea time, it's about drinking and eating something. 2 apples means 2 fruits, the two fruits which are apples. But now if you think of the sentence, I bought myself an Apple computer for study. Apple now is not the fruit. As you all know, Apple here is a brand of computers. Of course, their logo is an apple, and maybe people chose the name initially because of some stories with apples. I'm not sure, but I bought myself an Apple computer. The first thing here is not a fruit. How to know with algorithms, with computational methods, that the first apples, they refer to the fruit, and the second one to the computer brain? It's not so trivial for a computer to do that. It's very easy for us because we are, as human beings and native speakers of the language, or fluent speakers, at least we are really good at doing this kind of analysis very quickly, super good at that. But actually for a computer, it's not so easy. Another problem is what we call, for instance, coreference. This issue is to identify noun phrases that refer to the same entity. So if I read you the 3 sentences, the French president decided to delay the process. Emmanuel Macron arrived today in Spain, and Macron is no longer the favorite for the upcoming elections. You will agree with me, very obviously, for us it's very easy once again. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, or only Macron, they all point toward the same person. The current French president is the same person, but you see that you have 3 different noun phrases. How can you have a machine that can connect these 3 elements? You cannot do that actually if the machine doesn't have some sort of general knowledge about French presidency and this person, Emmanuel Macron. So coreference is actually a tricky problem. You have one variant in a way that is not so difficult in most cases, something we call anaphoric resolution. That's when you have something like that. Paul gave Mary a book. He made her very happy. We all know that he is Paul and her is Mary. How do you have the machine automatically understand that he refers to Paul in the previous sentence and Mary in the previous sentence? You need to know that Paul is masculine and Mary is feminine, and that's why you have the pronouns in the second sentence. So once again, you need to do something about it. I can read, but it depends. It can depend on the previous sentence. Of course, it can depend on the previous sentence. There could be ambiguities, right? Paul gave John a book. He made him very happy. Now it's ambiguous, right? You have he and him. How do you assign? Maybe given the meaning, the one who receives the book is very happy, and so you know how to assign. But it could be the opposite. You could be very happy to receive a book. You could be happy to offer the book. That's all the subtleties of language. And that's why it's difficult for computers to extract meaning from text. So these are only some of the challenges. Okay, so many different subtasks, very interesting questions, but not easy because of many challenges, ambiguities, tricky things that we find in languages, not so difficult for us as human beings, experts at language, but not so simple for computers. So this is just some sort of broad introduction to text mining. Are we okay? Do you have any question about this definition, these challenges, or is that clear enough? Just to let me know that you are on board. Make sense? Just let me know so that I know, okay, I can see one thumb up, so it seems okay, at least for you. Clear? Okay. So various tasks, various stuff. Why? Why do we want to bother? Okay. Why is it good to, why is text mining potentially useful? There are many different applications. So I can give you some examples. If you have a study, an approach which involves text, you may consider text mining. You might do stuff only qualitatively, okay? Text mining is a quantitative approach most of the time, or at least at the first level, it is quantitative, and it can come in addition to other quantitative techniques, and it can come in addition to other qualitative technique analysis. If you have a corpus of 20 news articles on the topic, you may read them and as an economist, as a journalist, as a historian, as whatever you are, you may write something about them and interpret them and do something qualitative, and you don't need text mining. But maybe you would also find that analyzing the frequency of different words, etc., that may be interesting. You see on the right, you have a graph, quite a complex graph. And this is a narrative network of US elections in 2012. So that's 10 years ago. I'm not sure, I don't remember right now how the network was built. But for instance, you could build a network like this by having many news articles about the elections. And then what you do, you check if two characters, two persons, two individuals, they appear next to each other in the text. And if yes, you relate them. And then you are going to build something like the one you see. And the nodes represent the individuals, and you can make them bigger or smaller according to how frequent these people are, how often they are cited in the news articles. You would end up with something like this. Some people are very well represented. Romney, Obama, of course, at that time, Santorum, Gingrich, Republicans, you see. And then there are many smaller people, let's say, in terms of how frequently they are cited, and then you get some sort of network like this. If you do something like this, if some of you have been doing like some graph theory, network theory, if you see something like this, maybe you could argue it has some sort of scale-free structure. Maybe there is some sort of small word effect as well. These are stuff you do when you analyze networks. It's a bit different, but with text mining techniques, you may build network that you may then further analyze. So could be useful in business, could be useful in sociology, in journalism, in medicine, in literature, depends where you are, what you want to do. If you have 10 news articles, you can read them and understand everything, and you will come up with deep thoughts and ideas that you won't be able to grasp with only text mining. But now if you have 10,000 news articles, reading everything and kind of integrating everything you read, now this is very tricky because your mind can't store the content of 10,000 news articles. Or at least if you don't have much time. Maybe if you devote your entire life to 10,000 news articles, you may achieve something great in the end, but who does that? So what I mean by that is that text mining, it becomes relevant, more and more relevant as the size of your set of documents increases. When you have millions or tens of millions of tweets, or if you want to investigate hundreds of novels or thousands of legal documents or news articles, that's when text mining becomes more interesting, because qualitative approaches then become really hard. Just too much data. You may still do qualitative approaches by sampling your set of documents. You don't read, you don't analyze everything, but you pick some elements, possibly in a smart way, and then you analyze your sample, and that can be of a reasonable size, and then you may do something more qualitative. But with text mining, if you have hundreds of novels or thousands or dozens of thousands of news articles, you can actually address everything, the whole corpus. That's good. And here, there is some sort of trade-off between the scale and, let's say, how fine-grained the analyses are. If you read everything and you read patiently and you read again and you compare in your mind and you take notes and everything, eventually you will always reach better, subtler conclusions than algorithms. But when you have a lot of documents, is it always necessary to be that detailed? Do you always need that level of subtleness? Maybe not. It depends. But the more elements you have, the less fine-grained usually you are, and vice versa. That's just the way things are, right? It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. So what can we do with text mining? I want to give you 3 main examples, but there are 3 examples among many possibilities. The first one I know quite well because this is something that was started by my brother. In France, my brother with some friends, they built and own a company. And this company, which is named VisiBrain, is a product that they sell to various institutions and companies to monitor the activity on Twitter. You can check that later on if you find this interesting. The point is to take advantage of how quickly Twitter usually reacts to various events, so that some people, let's say in charge, they quickly notice and they can quickly analyze and understand what is going on. So you see the way it's branded, instant insights. Monitor online press, blogs, and social media in real time, noise-free. And that can be used for brand monitoring. What do people say about your products, your brand? PR, crisis, influencers today, trends, stuff like that. So, for instance, if you are a political actor, like in France these days, people are preparing for the next presidential election. People want to feel what people think of them and of others day after day. And so that's why you have many polls and surveys and this and that. If there is something you say that is not so good, you want to detect it as quickly as possible. So what we can call, for instance, bad buzz. Okay, so for political actors, for brands, if something bad happens, you want to know about it as quickly as possible so that you can address the problem as early as possible to let's say to kill the problem while it's still in the nest. Because if it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, then it's too late. Same like what happens now in where I live here in Hong Kong. The epidemic, the wave with Omicron, the latest variant of COVID-19, it started to grow, and maybe they didn't act quickly enough, and now thousands of people get sick every day, but it's too late. So as early as possible, this is good. And actually, this is also, it also works for like epidemics like Ebola. Maybe you could have heard about it depending on where you come from, but for Ebola, you have at least 1 or 2 software, 1 or 2 programs which monitor a number of text resources, social medias, local newspapers, groups of medical practitioners who can chat online, stuff like that. And they monitor to detect as quickly as possible the emergence, like an Ebola outbreak. So you just constantly monitor what people say, because if some people start to say somewhere, oh, it's weird, 3 people died in this place yesterday. And then some other people, they also say something similar and, oh, we don't understand why, or something starts. Then you want to quickly go and check. So that's when it's interesting. Agnes, I will answer your question. I see your question in the. Oh yeah, I see your question in the chat. Let me come back to that. It doesn't mean you have to do something very, very sophisticated, okay? When you monitor something like Twitter, actually you have short messages which are not always very well written. So the more sophisticated tools of text mining may not always work so well, but you can start with simple things, simple text mining approaches. You may follow specific keywords and or hashtags. You may count the number of tweets on a given subject or the number of tweets which contain specific key elements. And if this number starts to increase dramatically, that is revealing, right? You may be willing to do some sort of sentiment analysis, and there are simpler and more difficult techniques for tweets which contain specific key elements. You may try to track with the previous ideas sudden changes in popularity or in sentiment. You may focus on some specific users of Twitter. For instance, those with a large number of followers. So those people we might call influencers, etc., etc. So you try to monitor the network, and once again, for brands, political actors, key players in a given industry, they may all find this useful. I know that my brother, in his clients, he has ministries, he has governmental institutions, because they want to know what people say about a new policy or this or that. And many companies, they want to know what people think and write about their products. Before I gave you the two other examples, Agnes asked an interesting question in the chat. I want to know how this text mining approach is used when I process a systematic review article. So people, they have used text mining with academic papers, for instance. Well, some people, they have do some data science by looking at who is publishing with who, trying to build some networks graph of connection between people. But let's say that you want to work on let's say you want to work on Ebola, and you use some online databases and you try to collect all the academic papers which contain the word Ebola. And you find many of them, and definitely you have no time to read everything. And many actually won't be that interesting for you. Well, then you might think of different tools. You might look at the most frequent words in these papers apart from Ebola. You might try to use text summarization, so that for each article, each paper published, you kind of get like a short summary, and then you can read the summaries rather than read the whole papers. You might try a number of things. You might look for other specific terms in these articles which contain the term Ebola, etc., etc. Does that make sense, Agnes, what I say? Does that answer your question, actually?
Yes, Prof. Thank you.
Okay. So, of course, scientific publications are documents. You can analyze them the same way. It depends what you want to extract from these documents. But there are a number of tools that you may consider, some simple approaches, and why not some more complex approaches. Let's say that, okay, you want to focus on medical papers on Ebola. maybe you could try to specifically look in the different documents of the numbers of people that were involved in the various studies. You could try to do that. There are different strategies that you may consider. So you can go, I mean, you can go in detail, or maybe you could, if you look at all the studies on COVID-19, there are dozens of thousands of studies. In these studies, you could look for names of countries. Maybe that could be of interest. Can we have quantitative approach and qualitative approach example? Yeah, okay, I'll answer this question with my third example, the one which I know best because I work on it. Okay, so I'll come back to that, Emmanuel. I'll give you this, another one. Today, there are a number of people who try to monitor terrorist activity online, broadly speaking. Okay, can be how to call that in English, the security agencies of various countries, whether it's France or Rwanda or whatever. Okay, so you have people in the militaries or elsewhere. They try to follow what is going on. It's not easy, but then they try, and then there are tools that may help them. So you want to detect, in particular, possible threats. Okay, if some people are exchanging information online to plan something bad, you want to detect that, right? If you want to protect the people that might get hurt by what these guys are planning. So I just give you one example I found online. It's the DENTI project. Detecting, it's an acronym, detecting and analyzing terrorist-related online contents and financing activities. And if you read a bit more, this project aims to deliver more effective, efficient, automated data mining and analytics solutions and an integrated system to detect, retrieve, collect, and analyze, all slightly different tasks, huge amount of heterogeneous and complex multimedia and multi-language terrorist-related contents. I mean, that's very ambitious. That's very broad. Multimedia, not text only, blah, blah, blah. Both from the surface web, the web we use every day, and the deep web, in case you have heard of that, including darknets. So subnetworks which are kind of hidden from most of us. So that's an example. So if I read a little bit more, then you kind of guess, you kind of see what they want to do. The project will develop innovative functionalities integrated into an open source environment, and it will support the management of diverse data sources and data types and multilingual in order to be able to detect and analyze data in diverse languages. So it's not only English or Spanish or whatever, and coming from diverse sources, videos, text messages, audios. That means speech recognition will be involved here. This framework introduces innovative knowledge mining, information fusion, and automated reasoning techniques and services, and provide automated functionalities, detection and monitoring of sources of relevant terrorist-related data in different nets, accurate and fast detection, analysis, categorization of suspect terrorist-related multi-language contents, large-scale temporal analysis of terrorism trends. This is different. Real-time summarization, we come back to this task, of multilingual and multimedia terrorist-related content, detection of disinformation, it could be malinformation in online contents, detection and monitoring of relevant individuals, and leaking pseudonyms with the original authors. That's kind of co-reference resolution, special one, because here the people, they might try to hide who they are and what they plan to do. Accurate and fast identification of terrorist online communities and groups, who is connected to what, maybe some sort of named entities relations to some extent, capturing, storing, and preserving relevant data for further forensic analysis. So you want to save some important stuff you find. So once again, that's another example. It's very broad, it's very ambitious, but I mean, the stakes are also quite high. So it makes sense that some people, they want to develop something like this. Seems good, right? Seems good as long as it only tracks terrorists and not everyday citizens. That's another issue then. This is a third example, which I've told you a little bit already, which is the analysis of the media. This is what I'm most interested in as a scholar. So it's try to understand how the media, for instance, newspapers, report on various events. Why is it interesting? Is that all of us, we read or we hear these media, and they strongly influence the ideas we have in our heads. The collective representations, the general public, we build of like these events that are reported. So one of my interests is the narratives of the Rwandan genocide. What do the media in various countries, they tell us about the Rwandan genocide? What do they report? What do they focus on? How does it change with time? How do they tell us, like the form? What kind of strategies they have? Do they use witnesses? Do they ask experts? In which domain? How does it evolve through time? I take this example because that's the one I'm working on, but it could be the situation in Myanmar today. It could be the US-China relationship. It could be the I don't know, the Ukrainian crisis, the Ukraine-Russia current crisis. It could be the current inflation and the evolution of the geopolitics of natural resources. It could be global warming. It could be whatever. Okay. And maybe when it's something about like the Rwandan genocide and this, I mean, the role France played in all of this, then maybe you want to check how the newspapers are doing it. Is there some form of propaganda? Or not? How does it shape the identity of a group? What about the collective memory? So here actually, the field that is behind these questions, this is what we call social psychology, the psychology of human groups with different subfields and connection with other fields. But here, I would say that you might use text mining tools that you apply on news articles to better understand collective memories, and that's part of social psychology. What you can do? Well, Emmanuel asked the question, can we have quantitative approach and qualitative approach examples? Sure. I have collected actually dozens of thousands of articles, all containing the word Rwanda or Rwandan, basically, in English or in French in particular. I could actually take a subset of these articles or focus on specific time periods, and I could read all the news articles myself. And I could read about Rwanda in other sources, and then I could try to provide qualitative answers to the question I've raised in this slide. I could do it with the capacities of my mind, right? Of my knowledge as a scholar, okay, of this question. That would be more qualitative. At the same time, or not at the same time, I can consider something more quantitative with text mining tools. Okay, actually, some people, they have written, I mean, about how Rwanda and the Rwandan genocide was treated in French newspapers. In what I've read that was published by these people, 95% of the time is qualitative. People who have read like really a lot, and they can synthesize everything they have read. They can make a number of interesting observations. That's qualitative, right? Now, my question is, if we adopt a quantitative approach, can we find additional stuff? Can we detect things that these experts who rely on more qualitative approaches, these experts haven't noticed? Okay, because I believe, and it's not only me, of course, that these different approaches, they can be complementary. Okay, so I read stuff by myself and I try to analyze and I write something is more qualitative. I do text mining is more quantitative. The point here is that if I really want to tackle 50,000 articles, there's no way I'm going to read everything. It's just too much. And even if I would set apart like 5 years and read everything, when I reach the last article, I will have forgotten what was in the first one. And if I want to take notes for everything, it will take me my whole life. Maybe for some people, it's a goal and it's valid, but it's still quite an endeavor, right? Does that make sense, Emmanuel?
Yes, it makes sense. So if I'm not wrong, so for quantitative, we're using text tools, mining, and for qualitative, we can use our own knowledge for analysis. Like
yeah, it goes a bit beyond that. For instance, if you analyze a number of documents, what you may do is you may apply some coding technique. I'll give you one software to do that. You might check this if you want to learn more. It's called Envivo. You need to pay for it. I think it's not free, but this is something where basically that's what you do also. If some of you would have done that before, when you analyze the transcriptions, the content of interviews, like you interview someone, something like a semi-directed interview, something like that, semi-directed, which means that you have questions you want to ask, but you let the people develop their points. It's not like a questionnaire, it's more open than that. And then so you record the interview, and then maybe you interview 20 people, you record 20 times, then you transcribe everything. So you type all what is said, and then you read everything and you try to identify some topics. And then you can kind of code all these topics. You can try to make a structure emerge. And you have some software to help you to do that. This one, Envivo, it's just one of them, okay? When you do that, it is rather qualitative, okay? What I also want you to keep in mind, but I don't have it in these slides, I have it somewhere else, is that your data may be more maybe like numbers, or your data may be more qualitative, like other things. But the analysis can be also either quantitative or qualitative. You may have a table, an Excel table full of numbers, and you may not use necessarily statistics. You may just look at all these numbers and you may try to come up with some interpretations. This will be a qualitative analysis of numbers, which are more quantitative. Or you can start with something like a text, but then you measure things like counts and frequencies and stuff like that. So then you have something, let's say, the material in a way is more qualitative, but your analysis is kind of more quantitative. So you have different options. And my feeling after 20 years of using different qualitative and quantitative approaches is that you will learn something different from different approaches. That's why it's good to, if you have time, if you can, to consider complementary approaches. That's how you will find more, basically. All right, good. This is more general, right? As designing scientific approaches in a way. What can I do if I have, let's say, 30,000 news articles on Rwanda? I could try to have some clustering techniques. to try to group the news articles in a number of groups according to their content. I could do that. I could use some sort of, maybe if you have heard of that, of K-mean techniques or something like that. K-mean clustering algorithms. Why not? I could try to detect the different topics which are discussed in these articles. I could use topic modeling to extract some lexical descriptions of these topics. I'll come back to that later on. I could follow how frequently some key actors are mentioned through time. Okay, maybe I'm interested in writers like a Scholastic Mukasonga, or I'm interested in politicians like Paul Kagame or others. Okay, I could, or people who were involved, of course, in the genocide. I could also try to analyze the form of the articles to infer the goal of their authors. I could look at the kind of verbs which are used. I could try, that's very interesting, to detect whether the authors, they try to inform, to deliver information, kind of neutrally, whether they try to convince you of something, whether they try to counter-argue some elements, whether they offer a balanced perspective. If we can track these things with algorithms, that becomes very interesting. You can really start to understand how different newspapers, they have approached the situation. What about newspapers which are rather on the right political side or on the left political side? In France, we have communist newspapers. We still have one big one at least, and in the 90s it was stronger. We have Catholic newspapers like La Croix, the cross in English. I mean, are these different newspapers doing different things? Can we highlight that? That's very important actually, to understand how journalists they convey, they do different things. So you could compare, so various newspapers, compare various journalists and their points of view. You could look at the interactions between text and images. That's also interesting, actually. I don't do that, but I know that could be very nice. So you see, 3 very different examples, all relying on text mining to achieve different goals. So what are the, let's say, the grazing pastures of text mining? You might want to monitor the pulse of a large audience. People who express themselves via textual channel. Could be the general public, really everybody, or it could be a specific community. The community of people who refuse to get vaccinated against COVID-19, anti-vaxxers, something like that. Why not? You could monitor the current public sentiment toward China in the United States and the sentiment in China toward the United States, the opposite. Wouldn't be very good these days. You can follow also, very commonly, you may follow evolution through time. Maybe it could be just a few hours. It could be some days, or it could be some years, or it could be even centuries. If you are looking at something happening very quickly, then like, okay, I know that you could monitor okay, is the World Cup or is the World Cup the final, and you want to see how people are excited about it on social media, and you follow the whole match, the whole game, and then things are changing by the minute, right? You want to monitor that. If you want to follow something like an epidemics, you will follow through days and maybe months. I'm interested in the memory of the genocide. That's a story of 25 years now. Or let's say I want to study how the writing styles of famous authors change through time. Then I may look at centuries. So For instance, evolution of the public sentiment toward China in the United States since the emergence of COVID-19. This is just one example among thousands. You may want to detect and analyze positive or negative events toward an event, toward a cultural or a commercial product, toward a firm, toward someone, etc., etc. You may pay attention to fake news. I've seen people preparing tools to analyze activities of online sexual predators, how you can detect them, how you can prevent them from hurting people. This is yet something else. You may look for individual signatures. You may look for patterns of co-occurrences. You may detect specific keywords. You may, okay, some people have done that. Like you have a novel or you have a number of novels and you want to extract the networks of relations between the characters in these novels and see whether different authors, they approach their characters and their relationships in different manners, sorry. These are all things which have become, I would say, quite common, very broadly speaking. So maybe, okay, Jacques. Okay, I'm interested in knowing deeply whether the analysis of media is based on inducting or deducting reasoning. Very good question. I like this. So is it induction or is it deduction? Are you trying to verify some hypothesis with the data, or are you trying to learn something like find some patterns in the data without a predefined hypothesis? Do you want to do something like we could say bottom up or something top down? These are the two main known approaches in, let's say, in science, right? Induction or deduction. I would answer to this question by saying you can do both. You can do both. You may have an intuition, you may have a hypothesis, and you may try to test it with your data, right? So unless I'm wrong, then that would be more like a deduction. So you want, okay, maybe I would like to say that I have some hypothesis about how Donald Trump has been positively or negatively viewed on social media in Europe through time. And I have the hypothesis that maybe it raised, then it fell down. I mean, then the attention decreased or it became more negative. And then maybe now it's slowly becoming positive again. Or then I could try to look for that doing sentiment analysis, right? Okay, that's one way of doing it. But in other circumstances, especially like if I do topic modeling and I don't know, I have some ideas, but it's really not clear. Like what do the people write about when they write about the Rwandan genocide in France? And then I do topic modeling and I discover that some words, they tend to appear together. And when I look at these sets of words, I identify a number of things. I identify things related to justice and trials, whether it's the International Tribunal or whether it's the Cachachas or whether it's yet something else. And then I found that another topic is the role of France in the process, or the geopolitics of the African continent and the place of Rwanda in this game, or yet something else. I may not know before starting what exactly I will find, and then maybe it's more inductive. Maybe I discover something. So it really depends what, I mean, both things are possible, okay? What is always nice, I would say, is that even if you have some hypothesis and you try to verify your hypothesis, when you are surprised by your data, when you discover something new that you didn't expect, I would say usually that's interesting, right? I mean, it's more exciting and you might be on something nice. If you have lots of hypotheses and you always verify everything very obviously, maybe it's just too obvious. to start with. Maybe you don't need to do that much text mining because it's just too obvious. Does that make sense, Jacques? Depends your topic, depends how you want to tackle things. Let's take a few minutes break before continuing. Okay, I've covered these two parts and I will continue. Just give me a few minutes and then we can continue. And the next part, I mean, part 3 is quite short and the 4 and 5 are a little bit more about the techniques. Okay, for now I'm giving you more general things. If you have any question, just type it in the chat meanwhile, and when I come back 4 or 5 minutes, I'll try my best to answer your questions. Okay, so just see you in a few minutes. All right, I am back. Maybe we can continue. Do you have any other question regarding what I've told you until now? Anything you would like to ask me? You have very interesting questions, okay? Like the systematic review article, the quantitative versus qualitative, induction, deduction, all very meaningful interrogations. So if you have anything else that you would like to ask, please don't just go for it. And I'll try my best. Is there anything you would like to know before or ask before I continue? Or is it good? Okay, seems okay. All right. If no more question for now, then I'll tell you a little bit about some ethical considerations. When you do a lot of technical things, whether it's deep mining or data science more broadly, if you are very, very focused on the techniques, on the algorithms and everything, you may forget the ethical part and might not be the best thing, okay? Because there are a number of ethical dangers that you should keep somewhere in your mind so that you are not only like a pure engineer, but also someone who kind of think beyond that. So first thing first is about data collection. Do you always have the rights to collect and analyze the material that you have in mind? If you consider books or articles, there might be some issues of copyright. Okay. If you are looking for old books, then the copyright might be done, no problem. Okay, free of copyright. That's for older things. But there are things that maybe you cannot analyze so easily, or maybe you have to check whether it's okay for the purpose of research, because that will be different from the purpose from commercial purposes, and so on and so on. If you are considering online platforms such as Twitter or Facebook, is it okay to readily download the data from people and analyze them? On Facebook, it's not open. On Twitter, it's open, but have you checked how it works actually? It turns out you can do basically whatever you want with Twitter, but it's very okay to analyze them. But sometimes it can be a little bit more complicated, okay? You might also think of all these massive scale techniques as possible invasions of one's privacy. Something a little bit like, if you have heard of this famous sentence from the book by Orwell, 1984, Big Brother is watching you, okay? You have large-scale surveillance programs which collect information on millions of users. Okay, maybe it's to detect terrorist threats, but is it always with the best intents? There are countries where if you publish something that should not be said, it will be detected very quickly thanks to these very large, these massive scale text mining techniques, and will be immediately deleted and possibly worse than that. So you need to worry, right? So these techniques, they help you to analyze a lot of data, but they may help you to analyze a lot of data to control the population, the people, to do this, to do that, not necessarily only a good thing. So that's the thing with data collection on large scales, especially. Some people, they have written that the efforts to censor pro-terrorism online content could be a problem. It could be, if you censor things, it could be impediment to free speech. So I just copied this from the EFF Foundation, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. In recent months, social media platforms that back in 2016-17, under pressure for a number of governments, have adopted new policies and practices to remove content that promotes terrorism. Okay, when you read something like this, You don't really want stuff that promotes terrorism online, right? So, okay. But then you read more, as the Guardian reported, these policies are typically carried out by low-paid contractors, or in the case of YouTube, volunteers. Okay, low-paid, maybe the job is not that, maybe not that good, not strong motivation, and with little to no transparency and accountability. And that's more of a problem, right? While the motivations of these companies might be sincere, such private censorship poses a risk to the free expression of internet users. In some countries, for some people, maybe such a censorship might not feel such a bad thing. In other countries, the feeling is very different, right? So just some people are worried about that. That's something we should be aware of. And the point is that the more automatic your approaches are, the more acute the question becomes. Another way of making this clearer is to ask the question, do you want machines? Do you want algorithms to have the responsibility basically to censor what you may write? Would you rather prefer that it's a human being who is smarter than a machine who does that or not? Is it okay? It's kind of the same question like, do you want to create robots which basically can take the decision of killing people, for instance, on the battlefield, like automatic drones? Is it something we want or not? That's something debated, right? It's the same actually for censorship online. You may have false positives. You may have false negatives. If you do a bit of statistics, these terms quite common. There is the responsibility of the programmers, which is involved. To what extent is it involved? There are all kinds of tricky questions here. And you have some people who specialize in trying to answer these questions. But definitely, if you build the algorithm, that's one thing, but how far can it go? That's another question, and that's an important question. There is also the big issue of data quality and representativeness. First of all, as we all know, fake news are all around fake information, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. People will relay stuff that is not true without knowing it. The stuff people will create on purpose, something that is not true. And then we see the result every day, right? There is so much stupid stuff online that is quite amazing to some extent. And then on the left side, you can see something I quite like. Abraham Lincoln. The problem with quotes found on the internet is that they are often not true. For sure, Abraham Lincoln didn't know of the internet, right? So fake news, data quality and representativeness. Are your data collected online good enough? If you accumulate social media content or online comments, are they representative of what people think? Okay, you may have maybe some people, they never comment online. So if you just look at online comments, you will never know what these people think actually. Or you may have fake comments and disinformation for political or commercial reasons. Okay, in some countries, you have people who are paid by the government to produce online content to orientate the public debate. That happens. Okay, that happens in China, that happens in many other countries. The information may only be approximate. So which sources can be trusted? You should be careful about these things, okay? I like to work with news articles from famous, well-established newspapers, okay? Because the journalists behind they should be held accountable. But when you play with social media messages posted by everybody, but everybody, you don't know who is everybody, who is behind everybody, that's the problem. So you need to pay attention. Are your data representative of various portions, components of the population? Men, women, young people, elderly people, people from minorities, etc., etc., from different religions, and so on and so on. So if you want to be complete in your understanding, these are questions you need to ask yourselves. When I submitted my first research proposal for my work on Rwanda, the comments I got from people were very interested, and I hadn't thought of this enough. I told them, okay, I want to work on the French newspapers because France played a special role in Rwanda, and because I'm French and I read French, of course, obviously. But then some people said, oh, but the point is that if you only focus on French newspapers, you will be trapped in some sort of anthropological context. You will see only things with the prism of, let's say, some sort of French culture is not the right term, but you will see through the French window. So it would be much better to have maybe also French articles written in French, but maybe in Belgium or Switzerland or Quebec in Canada. Or maybe you should also consider articles written in English, because then you won't be, your view won't be as narrow. That's the kind of something about data representativeness. It's more interesting to not only to focus on France, because then you can compare France with something else, which is very interesting. So that's questions you may have in your mind when you think of this different approaches. If I tell you just a little bit more about Twitter, to what do you agree when you start posting on Twitter? If some of you are posting on Twitter, most of the time you see the conditions of use of the service. Very long pages that nobody wants to read because everybody wants to start using the system. If you read, this is what you will find. Your rights and grant of rights in the content. You retain your rights to any content you submit, post, or display on or through the services. What's yours is yours. You own your content. Seems very nice. Okay, whatever you post on Twitter, you own the content. Nice. That's the first part. If you stop here, you feel happy and you use Twitter more. But then maybe you should read that. By submitting, posting, or displaying content on or through the services, you grant us a worldwide, non-exclusive, royalty-free license with the right to sub-license. That means Twitter, they will never pay you for your content, but they can have people pay to access your content. Sub-license. To use, copy, reproduce, process, adapt, modify, publish, transmit, display, and distribute such content in any and all media or distribution methods now known or later developed. So it works even for stuff that does not yet exist. This license authorizes us to make your content available to the rest of the world and to let others do the same. Blah, blah, blah. Such additional uses by Twitter or other companies, organizations, or individuals may be made with no compensation paid to you with respect to the content that you submit, post, transmit, or otherwise make available through the services. So they have the right to data mine your stuff any way they want, even with techniques that will be discovered in 20 years from now. You can be fine with that, or you may not find that so great. It is up to you. It's a free product. Nobody forces you to do it. But when the product is free, it's because you are actually the product. So that's just an example. There are some ethical questions behind that. If Facebook sells a list of users and their preferences so that for an upcoming election, you might get like some messages aiming to guide you in your political choices and your votes, now that's become serious, right? That's what happened with Trump, Donald Trump's election a few years ago. Doesn't sound so great to me, but then of course people have different ideas, but some people are doing that. This is ethical considerations. So don't just leave this on the side. I tell you this for text mining. It goes for all data science, actually. Okay? It's very easy to have many, many lectures on techniques, but techniques is not the only thing, basically. All right. Do you have any question about these ethical aspects? These questions exist everywhere, okay? Whether it's Africa or South America or Asia or Europe or North America, they are always here. I am interested in digital techniques in humanitarian action. That's another of my interests. If you have a crisis like an earthquake or a civil war or yet something else, and you analyze the social media to find who are the people in need, something like that. You need to keep in mind that people who are so poor, they don't have access to a phone or they cannot post anything on social media. These people, you will never hear their voice. And that doesn't mean they are fine. That is called the streetlight effect. Like you lost your keys and you just look under the light of the street lamp. You look for them under the light because elsewhere is dark, so you don't see. That's something also you need to pay attention to. All right. Are we good? Are you still with me? Everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
we are following.
Okay.
Maybe just a small
Yeah.
question on
Sure.
the ethical.
Yeah.
You said about tweeting. Sometimes people, they just tweet without even knowing whether what they are tweeting is not respecting the ethical. Like thinking that that is their perception and that's how they feel things. So how does those things are regulated? Is there any regulation to know that this is not ethical, this is ethical? Is there some references? Is there some guidance?
Oh, I mean, there can be some guidelines, maybe like some suggestions to make your data more representative, like a little bit what I told you about the biases in face recognition systems. You can have some guidelines that in your data set you should have people from all kinds of minorities, and you should pay attention to gender issues and stuff like that. Now, when it becomes ethical questions, I mean, it's difficult, right? Because people can have different standpoints and they're valid, right? I mean, okay, let's say politically, let's say in France, you can feel that you are leaning more toward the left and more toward the right. If you're on the left, you will think that people on the right don't think straight, and people on the right will think people on the left don't think straight, right? On the left, yeah. So I mean, it becomes a very human questions, right? So guidelines for ethics, I mean, it's difficult. That's where you need philosophers and not engineers. You need to have, I mean, it's the humanities. These are questions at another level. But for sure, if you leave everything without ever asking yourself the questions, problems are bound to happen. What you need is people sitting together from diverse backgrounds and trying together to think like, what can we do and what should we do with respect to fake information? Okay, I take an example. Like people who forward, who share online, obviously factually wrong information about COVID-19 and the vaccine. People will write, if you take the vaccine, you have 50% chance of getting cancer in 10 years. if you write something like that, yeah, like we know you have or you will get cancer, so don't take the vaccine. It's obviously wrong, because at the minimum we could say is that we don't know. Or if you say, okay, if you take the vaccine in 1 or 2 months, you are very likely to die. That is wrong, right? Because hundreds of millions of people, they got the vaccine, a shot, and they didn't die. What should you do? Should you forbid something like this on the internet? Or should you let it go through and you think that you should rather use money and efforts to educate people of the dangers of messages on the internet? Is it a question of education? Is it a question of regulation? These are ethical questions. These are philosophical questions. If you never ask the questions, nothing happens, and bad stuff happens in the end, I would say. If you want to address these questions, you need to do it in a proper manner, and that's not easy. That needs to be collective. You need to involve the community. You need to take time. You need to look for consensus, like all the big questions in our lives, right? As human beings. But disinformation online, that can kill people, right? In some cases. So what do you want to do? What is the best option? I don't know. I just think that I should not be the only one to decide, for instance. There should be many people involved. So yeah, that's what I would answer. The algorithm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The algorithm cannot be guilty, right? A piece of code cannot be guilty. But the people who decide to write the code, who build the company, who do this and that, okay, these people, they have some sort of responsibility, moral responsibility, legal responsibility, maybe. The code itself, the lines in R you write, these are just, yeah, it's just a program. So morality doesn't lie at this level. It's something at another level, at a more human level. Okay. Where can you find data sources for text mining? Let's say you want to learn, you want to practice, or maybe you want to, yeah, you want to do a literature review or something like that. If you want to do literature review, I guess you know maybe where you find your papers. But I can give you some places where you can go. You need, first step, you need to retrieve information. If you don't have the documents, then you cannot do anything. So you need to start somewhere. You can think of various sources. There are specific databases of text documents. In France, for instance, you have some institutions, like public institutions, who have put online for everybody to access if they want to, like the French newspapers of 100 years ago, okay, and their content. So you can go and you can find these things and you can work on that if you are a historian or if you are just an everyday person, but you would like to read what was written 100 years ago, for instance, during the First World War, to better understand. So you have many databases like this, or you have databases about all the papers published on COVID-19 or something like that. That's the first place. Tailored specific databases created by people and organizations. Of course, you have the web itself, okay? Everything you can find on the web, all the web pages of different qualities, but yeah. You have printed books which can be digitized, okay? That's what Google did and others. They took many books and patiently, using a lot of people, they scanned them. And you can find all these books now scanned online. Sometimes you need to pay, sometimes it's free, depends, right? Newspapers, printed or online, all newspapers, like, okay, when I was looking for news articles for Rwanda in the 1990s, for some of the French newspapers, I could find them digital, like a digital version. But for some newspapers, the articles are available in a digital format only, let's say, from 98 or 2002. So before, if I want to access the content, I need to go to a French library, find these newspapers, and scan them in a way, which takes, of course, way more time. It depends. So you have all these sources and many others. I show you this one. You can go online, you can find it. It's very easy. You go to a web browser and you type Gutenberg project, you click there, and here you are. And you can read it. Project Gutenberg is a library of over 60,000 free ebooks. No copyright, so usually a little bit older stuff. I checked earlier and I was surprised and I thought, oh, it's interesting that one of the books that is right now on display here, Bantu Beliefs and Magic by Charles William Hobley. And it's a book from exactly 100 years ago about Bantu cultures. Okay, why not? This is one of the 60,000 books you can find. All the world's great literature, as they say here. So if you are interested in famous writer from a few centuries ago, you will find that everything is free. Okay, book search. Popular. Okay, these are the most popular book that you will find there. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, Pride and Prejudice, Frankenstein, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I think you know these books, right? The Great Gatsby by Fitzgerald, Moby Dick by Melville, The Picture of Dorian Gray, Heart of Darkness by Conrad, The Prince by Machiavelli, Dracula by Stoker, Ulysses by James Joyce. I mean, these are all Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Stevenson. All these very famous books, they are for free on this platform. I want to check one of them. Maybe what? Okay, I will go for Moby Dick. Read this book online, HTML, Kindle, plain text, UTF-8. Okay, you can see it on my screen, right? Okay, that's it. You have the book, the whole story, the whole text. You have this for dozens of thousands of books. Actually, in R, I prepared this just before. I zoom in so you can see better. And I can share that online, of course, on the Google Drive. You have a package to access the Gutenberg archive. You see, library, Gutenberg, you get the data, blah, 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 blah. And then, okay, the code, I just show it quickly. I don't explain exactly how it works. I may do that later on. I'm looking for all the authors all the strings of characters for the names of the authors in which I found Melville. And when I do that, I get a number of IDs, and each ID corresponds to a book on Gutenberg, in the project Gutenberg. Then I can actually check what are these books that are available. And you see the first one, Herman Melville, Moby Dick in English. Okay, there are actually 64 books where the author is Melville, and I could check everything. How can I check that? I can check that. Well, I would need to, if I do like this very quickly. All right, you can see here better. You see, most of the sources are in English. You have different authors. They are not all Herman Melville. You have other people with Melville in their name, but then you can see all the books by Melville, Typee, Gombia, The Confidence Man, His Masquerade. You have a number of things, and then of course you have Moby Dick, And it seems that you have different versions of it. So if you have identified a book you would like, very good. The ID 15 should be nice. And then you see there is a function Gutenberg download. Up. It takes a bit of time. And it's on my computer now. Everything is on my computer. It's just a table of text. I find this quite nice. I don't know about you, but everything, if you would like to play with R and text mining and everything, Project Gutenberg has it for you. It's not Harry Potter and the very recent books, stuff like that, but for many, many books from the past, it's here in English, but also in other languages. Depends. Oh, that's not the one I want to have here. It's this one. Okay, when I created the slide, is not I copied this from above. They had 57,000 books. Okay, I think that's something like 2 years ago. Now they have 66,000. So they have actually increased by 9,000, like more than like something like 15%. So all these books, they were digitized by thousands of volunteers and proofread for enjoyment and education. You like Shakespeare? You will find all the plays by Shakespeare on Project Gutenberg. It's a really nice resource. You can use it for free. Everybody can use it. You want to use it with R? You actually have tools to do that more easily. Perfect. You want to download the book and you want to apply syntactic parsing, the stuff we did yesterday, you can totally do that. I have done it many times. It works. It's great. Very simply, you get all the analysis. You want to work on the style on William Shakespeare writing style, you can start doing that. This is kind of the code I've shown you. Okay, so there are different ways. You can look for book titles, you can look for authors, you can look for years, like year of publication, whatever. Okay, that's really nice. That's one resource. If you want a lot of text, the whole Wikipedia in one language or another is available as a text archive. You want to do machine learning, text mining and stuff, you go to the address in green. This is what we call a dump. So it's the whole thing thrown into a big file and it's regularly updated. It's like more than 10 gigabytes. So of course, if you want to play with the whole thing, it takes time to download. And if you pay for the amount of stuff you download, that will add to the price, right? It takes time to process. It's quite big, but of course, some people are playing with this. And actually, there are different ways you can get it. There are all kind of metadata and this and that and this and that. That's another very nice source. Pretty big. If you are interested in news articles, you have some databases which contain press news and newspapers. All the articles, and every day, the newly published materials, they are added to the database. Okay, Jacques, in quantitative approach, we are familiar with data sources, which is split into two categories. Primary and secondary data, what are about text mining? Good question. Primary, secondary data. Well, if people took books by Shakespeare and digitized everything and cleaned everything and put everything on Project Gutenberg, and now you download this is secondary data for you, right? Because you did not do the acquisition. If you use a database like the one you can see in red on this slide, I would say it's also kind of secondary data if it has been processed, pre-processed for you. Now, if you digitized thing. If you create the text, obviously, if you are more involved in the collection process and the pre-processing and everything, I'd say then it becomes more primary data. Sometimes secondary data is perfect for what we want to do as a data scientist. And then we're happy because it saves ourselves a lot of efforts. But sometimes secondary data is not exactly what you need. And then you need to work on your own first. Then you deal with more primary data. So both are possible. It depends. The nice part with these databases, with Project Gutenberg, is that it's rather secondary data for you, but then it saves you a lot of time. In 2 minutes, 1 minute, you can have all the books written by Melville or Mark Twain on your computer and start doing stuff with that. Or all the books written by the French writer, the science fiction writer, Jules Verne. I have used this, it's all secondary data to me. I'm very happy that it's secondary, it means I didn't lose time to prepare everything or digitize the book by myself. Does that make sense, Jacques? If they have done the work for you, then it's secondary. Then I would say you just enjoy it and relax. I prefer that. When I told you I don't have digitized version of the news articles for some journals, from some newspapers before 1995, if I go in the library and collect and everything, it's kind of more primary than secondary, maybe, something like this. So here in this university where I work now, University of Hong Kong, or when I was in Lyon and I was teaching at the University of Lyon, I had access to some databases where I could get all the news articles published by French newspapers or like New York Times or Le Monde or actually some African newspapers as well. And I could just search like, okay, give me between 2000 and 2005, all the newspapers published in these 10 newspapers, all the news articles published in these 10 newspapers, which contain the word Rwanda or Rwandan. And then you start collecting. This is so good to create large data sets. Now, of course, these services, they don't come free. So when you are in a large university like here or in France, the university may pay it for you. And then you can download with some restrictions. Now, if you ask me about the University of Rwanda, whether they have the subscription to something like this, I don't know. It's about the policy of the university library and whether the university has the resources to offer something like that. I'm not sure if you know whether you have access to something like this. If you are interested, you may check. If you want to read stuff that has been published on one issue or another, these databases, they are great to do that. But as a single, as an individual, it's expensive. If your university or your institution paid for it, then you can enjoy using it. So that's how I built my own corpora for my studies. And you can export as HTML files or PDF or raw text or this or that. That's also a nice place. I just don't know if your university can afford paying for that. That's when, of course, scholars in richer countries, they can do stuff that you cannot do in other less wealthy places. And that's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. So if you download something from Europress, for instance, this is the French article, and then you will see that you have the name of the newspapers, Le Monde, you will have some information, the rubric, the date, the number of words, the title, then you might have additional elements. Say we have a book that contains different articles. Does a document mean a single topic or a single page? It is entirely up to you. A document is a piece of text. If you have a novel, it can be a single document. You may consider each chapter as a document. You may consider each paragraph as a document, or maybe even each sentence as a document. What you should do is create the documents that make sense to you, that are meaningful for what you intend to do. If you want to compare many different articles, intuitively, one document should be one news article. If you have a novel, maybe what is good is to have, if you want to compare the different chapters and follow the story, maybe one chapter is one document. It really depends on what you want to achieve, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, good. So when you have an HTML page like this is what you will read with your web browser. Is it something you can use straight in R? No, because HTML, you have information about how to format the text. So that's how the previous thing would look like. And you see that you have a number of tags, like a style and head and body and header and article and span and font in italic and this and this and that. If you provide this to a topic modeling algorithm, it is going to underperform, because that's not French only, that's French plus a lot of additional stuff, which means you need to clean it. Here, you need to remove the HTML tags, but maybe before removing it, you can use these tags to extract relevant information. Because if you go there, you can see that you have doc header, titre article. You can read like article title somewhere, and that gives you where to look for the title. So if you have an HTML document like this, you detect the tags to extract meta information like the title or the author, the journal, the newspaper, sorry, or the journal, etc., etc. If you do it manually, you will die of exhaustion and boredom, right? But, and that's one nice thing, you have tools to help you do that. In R, for example, you have packages such as XML. You learn how to use them, and then you can very easily manage all these tags to extract information and then discard everything, so you end up with only the text with no tags left. You can learn how to do that. You want to play with Twitter. I've told you that's one nice place to explore what people think. One issue with Twitter is that the way people write on Twitter is not the way people write in novels or in newspaper, because it's more colloquial, it's more informal, less standard language. If someone writes, "Will you come tonight?" with a U instead of YOU, and tonight with a 2 instead of TO. I mean, usual tools, they may not perform that well, okay? So there are different techniques here, but you may need to correct things first, pre-process. But actually, they have been corpora. Now we have corpora of tweets in English, for instance. And they have been annotated. They can be used for a training process. So if you want to do deep learning on tweets, there are actually corpora that you may take advantage of. And I just give you one places where you might look for such things. So it's a bit more difficult than news articles or novels because the language is not so standard. But I mean, since many people are interested in mining tweets, they have developed resources to help you to do that. What are the things? You may have typos, misspellings, like earthquake without the final E, missing without G, overcome with no E. Oh, that's when you may do some spell checking. That's what we've done before, right? Or you may have single word abbreviations like please, PLS, govd, like government, or DPT for department, MSG for message. Or you may have multi-word abbreviations, IMO, in my opinion, BRB, be right back. LOL, lol, right? Laughing out loud. Or phonetic substitution like tomorrow, forever, forget, wait. Words without spaces, pray for Nepal, we help, we need shelter, especially for hashtags. So all these things, they are not standard English. So maybe what you want to do is before you start to analyze your tweet, you may want to correct them. You may want to normalize them so that then you can take advantage of algorithms trained on more standard language, especially stuff like with supervised learning and deep learning. So misspellings, try spell checking. Single word or multi-word abbreviations, maybe you keep a dictionary of all these things and you look for them and then you replace them by the correct expression or word in English, etc., etc., etc. So you may do that and that will help you to work with tweets. Data sets on tweets on COVID-19 is just an example, a nice example to show you how big the sets can be. You see my red arrows? This is stuff you can download. You can read. The current data set contains 237 million tweet ideas for Twitter posts that mention COVID as a keyword or as part of a hashtag. Between March and July of 2020 is only a few months. And the other one, Weibukov, is a 40 million posts during a couple of months written in Chinese. Actually, you don't get exactly the tweets. You get their ideas, which means then that you need to use tools to extract the content of the tweets from the ideas. And I think it's called rehydration of the corpus or something like that. So that's the kind of sizes for the corpus that you may play with. It's huge. Finally, you may just do web scraping. You go on websites and you look for some elements. Maybe you are not only interested in text, but also images and sounds, and you do web harvesting, web data extraction. And most of the time you have an HTML file, and then you need to clean it to pre-process it so that you can extract text and relevant tags, the meta information. This requires a bit of programming skills, of text mining, text curation skills. But of course, some people do that very well, and then you can also learn to do that if that would help you. So if I summarize, there are many possible sources where to collect text data. And some of them, they are definitely available to you in Rwanda or in other neighboring countries. There are many research questions where you may usefully consider these resources. I've told you social representations in psychology. That's what I'm interested in. You want to study economical or political evolutions. News articles may be your friends. To better understand style or narration in literature. Or actually, if you are a linguist, to study the language itself as it is used by very large numbers of people, rather than only 20 or 30 people you could work with in your university, in your laboratory. So with this, what is nice is that there might be all the questions which have been addressed before that you may revisit with new approaches. And that may be quite nice. You may add something, bring something new to the debate. And then that means you are creating new knowledge. You are working as a scholar. You are contributing. All right. What I've left to do with you for today, and then we'll continue on Monday, is to tell you a little bit, start to tell you about regex, regular expressions. That's the last part. Before I do that, do you have more questions about everything I've told you so far? Is there anything you wish to know? Anyone? Or is it okay? Okay, okay for everybody. Okay. All right, I'm just taking care of this. All right. Didier, okay. Okay. All right. So, I mean, it takes a bit of time to learn how to use the different tools. And if you are using R or Python, I mean, you need to practice a little bit. But once you get good at it, then you can really process a lot of different things. And that's quite nice. So, unless you are very, very, very lucky with your secondary data, the data you will initially collect, it won't be ready for analysis unless really the cleaning has been done before. So even, for instance, if you have an HTML file and it has already successfully been transformed into a pure text file, no more tags, there might still be some work to do. Sometimes the cleaning may be quite light, or sometimes it may be heavier. If you have printed materials, then you need to digitize everything, and then you might apply optical character recognition, OCR. When you do that, even if OCR software are pretty good now, there will be some errors that you need to address. And then you may also need to work on the structure of the initial documents. Let's say that you scan the front page of a newspaper of the edition of a newspaper for a given day. Okay, you extract the text, but usually you may have different columns. And some articles, they start here and they continue on other pages and this and that. I mean, you need to take care of all of this, and it's not that easy. That may be something you need to do. Sometimes there may be content which appears twice, duplicated content. Maybe you want to drop duplications. Sometimes there might be some typos. Sometimes punctuation may be missing. Sometimes this, sometimes that. You may want to correct as much as possible so that your data set is as clean as possible before you move to analysis. So there are some deeper errors and some more like lighter surface errors. I'm going to focus on that because the other ones are trickier to address. Like if you want to rebuild the structure of the articles on the front page of a newspaper, that's not very easy. That's quite deep. It's not on the surface, I would say. So more like misspelling or pieces missing, stuff like that. What can you do? You may try regular expressions. In short, regex. So regular expressions, they can be very, very useful to correct, for instance, some recurring errors in the document, or actually to look for specific patterns. So what is a regular expression? Actually, it's a string, it's a sequence of characters. But this sequence of characters, it does something special. It describes a search pattern. You want to find something which corresponds to a pattern, and you describe this pattern with a regular expression. So once you have defined your search pattern with a regex, you apply it to strings of characters to find and possibly modify specific combinations of characters. And if you know regex quite well, you can look for stuff which is quite complex. A very, very, very simple search pattern is that you look for a specific word. That's very simple, okay? I'm looking for the word football. in all my documents. That's the simplest stuff you can do. Now, if I'm telling you, okay, I'm looking for all the words starting with an uppercase letter, or I'm looking for all the words which end with the letter T. Now you have some, like you are looking for a specific pattern. So how does that work? Let's say that you want to look for Rwanda, okay? These letters in that order, R-W-A-N-D-A. If you look for all the instances of the strings of characters Rwanda in news articles, for instance, you always have to remember that this is a string of characters. Characters which come one after the other, and that's it for the program. If you just choose the search pattern to be Rwanda, you are not only going to get the word Rwanda, you are also going to get the adjective in English Rwandan, because in Rwandan, you have the string of characters Rwanda. So when you do regular expressions, you have a way to say, I'm looking for a word, not something which appear in a larger word. So there are some symbols that you can put in your regex to indicate that that is the beginning of a word and that is the end of a word. So if you look for the word Rwanda, you may use \\, smaller than, then Rwanda, \\, greater than. So you want to look for the string Rwanda, but just before is the beginning of a word, and just after is the end of a word. So actually, these two symbols, these two \\, smaller than, or \\, greater than, they are a simple way to express that before you want maybe a space or a punctuation mark or the beginning or the end of a string of characters, but nothing else. So for instance, you don't want an N after DA, like in Rwandan. So that's a way to identify words, any word you like, in your documents, in your written documents. So that's just one of the many small things you can use to look for exactly what you want. For instance, I give you some examples. If you find something like this, the one here, if I use this, you see here, you have this. You have here and this one and something in between. These two square brackets, they mean any of the elements in between. And if you write 0 to 9 like this, 0-9, it means all the possible digits. And here, with this, you indicate that you want 3 repetitions. So what does that mean? It means you would like to find all the instances of 3 digits in a row. Like 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 4, 9, 9, 9, 0, 0, 0, 4, 7, 4, whatever. So any digit 3 times in a row, not 2, not 1, 3. But then if you have in your text something like this, of course, you will have 946 or you will have 465. So you will get you will get that. It will be returned. If you don't want that, then you need to write something slightly different. If you only want 3 digits. Or for instance, here, if you check what is written here, you see you have a round bracket and yet another one. And then you have 2 things. And Not 965 because you have 4 in between. Okay. So there is something in between. Let's say you would like to find all the numbers which start by 9 and finish with 5. You could actually write something like 9, any digit in between. Okay, I'm going to write this, for instance. If you write that, you will look for all the series of numbers of 4 digits, starting with 9, ending with 5, with 2 elements in between. But if you are looking for this one, and you have this in your text, 9465, here, basically, you would identify 946, 469, but not 965, because they are not one after the other. There is 4 in between them. So that would not detect that. If you look here, so I have this round and this round one, and then I have this one. This means this or that. And then you want a space, and then you want was. So here you are going to look for all the instances in your documents of either Thomas was or Peter was. Why not? Or yet another example, if you use the hat like this, if you write something like this, hat means the beginning of a string of characters. So you are going to look for all the strings of characters which start with an uppercase T. No problem. And if you want to find all the strings of characters ending with an uppercase T, then you might try T and like a dollar. So of course, if you are looking for the beginning or the end of a string of characters, it means in your documents, the string of characters, the beginning and the end should be meaningful, right? So let's say that you have one string of characters, one sentence, then you might look for all the sentences starting with this or ending with that. But if you have one string of characters which contains different sentences, then that's a slightly different thing, right? These are only some examples of what you can do, but maybe we can try to learn more and practice. You can do way more things. You can look for all the words starting with B, lowercase. Words like banana or a bridge or butterfly or whatever. So you say, okay, I want to look for an expression which is the beginning of a word, then B, then any letter at least 0 times or more. And then I want the word to end. That's how you could look for all the words starting with the lowercase b. And the plus here means at least once. So actually, if it's, oh yeah, sorry, I made a mistake. If it's plus, it's at least once. So all the words starting with B, but not B alone. B plus at least one element. BC, B, Ba, Bo, Bu, whatever. And A to Z, that would be a lowercase later. And then you have all the words, if you want all the words starting with lowercase b or uppercase B. Then you combine different things. The beginning of a word, you use this, what I've shown you just before, uppercase B or lowercase b, then small lowercase letters, at least one, and then you would like to meet the end of a word. So that is a regex. That's a regular expression. That's a search pattern, which corresponds here to all the words starting with smaller case or uppercase, lowercase or uppercase b. Maybe you want to find that because that's interesting. So hopefully you see that you can either write simple regular expressions, or you can combine different symbols to create very, very elaborated requests. So if you want, you have this address. Oops, sorry. This is a PDF file that I have always not too far from me, where you have, that's what we call a cheat sheet. Maybe you have seen that. You want to learn like a package in R, you are looking for the cheat sheet, and you see all the functions and all the important things summarized on a single page. Very useful. So if you check this one, you will find the meaning of all the symbols for regular expressions. You see that you find some that I've told you already. The hat means the start of the string. The dollar, the end of the string. This one here. Oh, page. How come? Ah, maybe the link doesn't work anymore. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's somewhere else. Just give me 1 second. And sometimes these things they come and go. So there are many actually if you go online, but the one you want is it this one? Let me see. Oh, okay. What about this one? I will, if you don't find it, I will find it. But this one, does it work? Can you try this one? Is it working? Is it okay? Perfect. Okay. So you see, that's something basically you print and keep next to yourself when you start to learn regular expression, and you have everything you need. Okay, that's in R. So in Python, you could find, you just go on Google, and then you type like cheat sheet regular expressions like R or Python or yet another language or Perl, and then you will find, yeah, that's another one, right? Regex 101. I think I've heard this one before. Yeah, you can try. That's an online thing to try. That's, yes. Actually, the regular expressions, these elements, they are more or less the same for all the languages, okay? So in Python and R, they should be nearly the same. However, you may have small differences. So they are actually slightly different versions of all these things. You have the POSIX extended regular expressions. In R, that's the default, I think. But you also have Perl-like. I think Java maybe also has its own convention. But once you know it for one system, the other systems will be very similar. Okay. But you can try to use this to look for patterns of interest. And then in R, actually, you see that you can use we will work on that on Monday, okay? We will work on that on Monday. You can try to detect patterns, grep L, string detect. And if you remember here, in what I showed you, when I was looking for Melville, you see the function is grep. And I wrote grep is a function using regular expressions. So I looked for the string Melville, just like this, in the column author of the table Gutenberg metadata. So I use grep. That's how I identified the books written with the author being Melville, or having Melville in the name of the author, more precisely. So you can detect a pattern, like detect a string, all the strings of characters which have this pattern in them. You can split a string using a pattern. That's what we have done some days ago. I showed you str split. You remember we used that when we did the spell checking? I told you I would explain to you later on. That was something with a regular expression. You can locate pattern, like where is it in a string of characters? Where does it start and where does my pattern end? You have like str locate, or you have regexp r. Yeah, so this one, if you have question mark, I think you mean something like this actually. Something like this. It should be equal rather than two dots, maybe. So this one is a kind of look ahead. So here, D like this, that could mean like a digit, but maybe yeah, maybe here that would be like this instead. So if you check on my, like, okay, it's here, right? And you have this 3 times. So maybe you would have something like this. Okay. Equal tam 1 2 and then you write okay, you write something like this. It's a bit tricky. Sorry, there should be this at the end, but I don't know why I can't type it now. So there should be a closing bracket at the end. Here you are looking to all the sequences of 2 digits which are preceded, that's the meaning of this, by a sequence of 3 digits. So if you have in a string of characters something like this, then what you would detect here is 56. That is 2 digits, one after the other, preceded by 3 other digits. This one is a kind of tricky, but it shows you how powerful it can be. Does that make sense? Maybe it's not exactly what you are looking for and what confuses you. It's just my reinterpretation because I don't know exactly version. Yeah, so it's here. I don't use this so often, but yeah, it's here. You see what we call the look ahead. Positions followed or preceded by. So actually, maybe it's a look behind or look ahead. That's where I need to double check, but we can check together. We can try on Monday if you want, okay? I will check just before to refresh my mind because I haven't used this a lot especially recently. But yeah, you can look for some stuff preceded or followed by other things. So it means it's very powerful. You can really look for a lot of different things. How can it be useful for text cleaning? Maybe sometimes in your documents, you have double spaces. You have space and space. but usually one space is enough. So you may write first, okay, process all my documents and replace all the double spaces you find by a single space, just so that things are more homogeneous and everything. But actually, for software like a UD pipe, double space, they are processed, no problem. So sometimes you have different styles of quotes. You see it here, right? They are, I'm not sure if this one we call French quotes or what, and then you have like this and like that. So you may also replace the quotes to have only one type. Not so useful, I would say, but maybe you want that for consistency or something. Or that's more interesting, maybe you have a P with a dot. And actually that means page, right? So maybe for your later analysis, you want to turn all of these into page. Or maybe you have some symbols like this, and you want to replace the first one by euro, because maybe that will make your analysis later on better. Okay? If sometimes you have euro which is spelled in letters, and sometimes you have only the symbol, maybe they won't be considered together. So you want to make it homogeneous. Or you find that there are some words which are often misspelled, and you want to correct that. Or maybe you have Mr. like this, and you would like to turn it into Mr. like this, because in English, that's the proper form. So there are a number of cleaning things, operations that you may consider before you move to further analysis. Okay, we are going to practice this more. Okay, we can try it together. You get this one, you keep it with you, and you try to use it to build your regular expressions. At first, not super easy. The more you use it, the more expert you become. Okay, it's very logical, very kind of mathematical to some extent. Once you get it, then you can create very powerful searches. Can be useful. Can be useful not only for cleaning text. If you have to finish, because I think it's my last slide. Yeah. If you have 50,000 news articles or 300 million tweets, okay, so the question mark means like you want to detect a regular expression only if there is another regular expression, another pattern just before or just after. So if you go back there, you see that the question mark can be like this, but you can also have this one, look ahead or look behind. So one regular expression you want to find, one pattern, only if there is another pattern just before or another pattern just after. So you may want, for instance, if I work with my papers, like let's say I want to find all the instances of Kagame, but with Paul used before Kagame. Then I could check through time. Do people call the Rwandan president Paul Kagame or only Kagame? I could try to see the evolution of these two ways to mention the Rwandan president. Why not? I'm sometimes confused how to read regex. Do we start at the starting, in the middle, or at the end of it? The point is that when you have a string of characters, you are going to scan it from the beginning to the end, character after character, looking for your search pattern. That's how it works, okay? So you go through all the strings of characters that you have, that you want to inspect, and then you look for this expression everywhere. Then you might just say, okay, give me all the strings of characters when you have where you have found this pattern. In that case, what you are doing, you are detecting the pattern. Or maybe you want to say, okay, I want all the strings of characters when I have my search pattern found, but I want to know where it is. Is it at the beginning or in the middle or at the end? Where is that? You want to locate the pattern in that case. Or maybe each time you find a Kagame, you want to replace it with Paul Kagame. In that case, you want to replace a pattern by something else. Depends what you want to do. Or let's say that you are looking for all the sequences of 5 numbers in a row, okay? So you might want to extract all the sequences of 5 digits, sorry, not numbers, 5 digits in a row in your documents. Then that's about extracting. For the one, Emmanuel, for the last one, which is a bit tricky, I'm not sure it makes sense to look. I mean, you can look for any sequence of 2 digits. That's one thing you may do. So if you want to extract all the patterns, you are looking for all the sequence of 2 digits. That's how you would write it. This repeated twice. Let's say that in your text, you have this number. If you want to extract the patterns which correspond to these search patterns, what you will get with these numbers in your document, you will return 2727. You will also have 75. You will also have 58, and you will have 83. Okay? You look for your search pattern everywhere in the string. So here, if you have this thing, you can actually identify several sequences with 2 digits. So if you want to extract them, it will give you 27, 75, 58, 83. But let's say that you want, when you have numbers, you want to only extract the final 2 digits. Then you need to say, I want to extract the final 2 digits. So I want to extract 2 digits when there are other digits before or something like that. And if you want exactly 3 digits before or more than that, then you might use this question mark equal, blah, 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 blah. I am going to upload the PDF on Google Drive, okay? And I'm going to give you a bit of homework until Monday morning, basically. Okay, okay. I like when I read very clear, okay? Okay. So we are going to practice more on Monday. So don't worry too much. All right, let me see. Let me just say this to you. If you have 30,000 news articles, there is no way you are going to completely clean them unless you are ready to spend a lot of time trying many, many, many things. And usually you don't have that much time. Now, if you have 30,000 news articles, if there are a few mistakes left, that will be some kind of noise. But if there is not so much noise, that should not create too much damage for later analysis and the extraction of what we would call signal. If you don't correct enough, maybe your signals will be a bit distorted, and you don't want that. But if the noise is quite small, not so much, small amount of noise, that won't change things too much. So definitely you need to correct enough. But too much correcting may not improve your analysis that much. So you need to find the right balance so that you do what needs to be done, but you don't lose too much time doing too much that is not really necessary. So you try to clean stuff, but at some point you need also to know when to stop, when to stop cleaning. That's how I would put it. So maybe, all right. Maybe what we can do, because maybe, I mean, it's nearly done, and I guess you are quite tired, and I start after 1 week of 3 hours per day, I start also to feel pretty tired, to be honest. Okay, I'm going to give you some activities to do, and you can try. I hope you will try for the weekend. Let me try this one in a second. Oh yeah, so this one doesn't work. So I'm going to find the page, the PDF. I have it, so I'm going to send it to you. This thing here, although you have it also in the slide. I'm going to send you this one. I will put it in the Google Drive. So you have this with you. And what I want you to do before we meet is try to do a number of exercises. Like find the regular expression to detect, to modify, to locate all the strings which start with Elizabeth or Mary, or all the strings which start with a vowel, or which start with something else than, or we start or end with Elizabeth, or do this or do that. Okay, so you need to try to do this exercise, these small things. Or you want to find, detect, locate, modify, whatever, all the words which end with 2e, or end with e or al, or start with r or r uppercase. You see, I want to give you a number of things so that if you want to learn, you can start trying this, looking for the answers, for inspiration on the cheat sheet. And then, of course, I've written all the answers. I have everything, okay? But maybe if I give you the answers right now, you don't learn so well. But if you try first and then I give you the answers, I think that would be better, okay? Let's say, for instance, you want to find in your documents all the IP address in this range, or all the email addresses. That can be very good, right? You want to extract all the phone numbers or all the email addresses in your documents. And there are actually some resources, which I hope they work still, where you have some explanations about regular expressions. So what I would like to propose, if that's okay with you, I put this online, like just after we end the session. During the next 2 days, or maybe this afternoon, you try to play with that. You try to answer the questions. Then when we meet on Monday, we can check the solutions together. I can try to answer your questions, and I will practice a little bit on my side as well to have as fresh a mind as possible to deal with that. And then we can also try a little bit with R, okay? Like not only playing with a pen and a paper, but like using str split or str locate or this or grep L, or like to try detection, location, extraction, modification. I can prepare something for you to do that. Does that sound like a good plan? Is it okay? Okay. All right. So if you have any question now, please ask me your questions, okay? Otherwise, when we are done, I will upload. I've uploaded already the today's lecture, okay? I will upload also. I will create like a folder, activity number 2. I will put my different questions. So I will put a PDF with what you have to look for. And I'm going to find the cheat sheet that you could not locate. Then you have everything. You can also look for some tutorials online, and you try to answer the questions. Then when we meet on Monday, we play with that more, and then we try to do it. We have some more activities also with R, and then you will have learned how to computer, I mean, first steps toward becoming a regex expert somehow. Okay. Do you have any question left for what I've told you today? Once again, we're quite far away, right, from each other. I mean, you are not far away from each other, but I'm far away from you and you are far away from me, right? So everything is online. Would be better if I would be in front of you. Okay, so you are, okay, you are on your side as well. So if we were all together in a big classroom, maybe that, I mean, obviously that would be easier and everything. So I just try my best. I just try to share some of what I know so that you could use it later on. We have 3 more days together for this time. We continue, okay? I have other things to share with you. I will show you a little bit about topic modeling and everything so that you know about that as well. But yes, Florence, try to do it manually first. Like the questions you will find, you don't need R to do them. You can just start to do it without R. It's just writing the search pattern. What we can also do on Monday together, we can also try search patterns and everything with instructions in R. Okay, so that is not, we do it like a more theoretically, but then we try with R. If you want, you can try with R directly, but I don't, it's up to you. Okay, we will try that together on Monday. Anything you would like to ask, or are we good for today? That was quite a long week, so if you are fine, I'm fine. Good. All right. So if I don't see anything, I'm going to assume you are either tired or good, or both of them at the same time. You have all, you would like all the courses already uploaded. That's what you mean, right? So you can check in advance. Okay. I cannot upload the activity on Monday because I've yet to prepare it. Okay. I adapt things, but I can upload the last 2. I can upload the last 2 lectures. Does that sound good? Maybe I will drop some of the slides, but I can upload that today. Is it what you want, Emmanuel? Okay. If you want to check it, you check it, but you don't have to check it because I will cover it with you. It's just if you want to have a quick look ahead, I'm fine with that. All right, so let me do that as well. I'll do it. I try to do it in the coming 30 minutes. Otherwise, I do it at home once my kids are in bed. So that means in like 2 hours and 3 hours from now. Okay. I stop the recording now. I will also upload the recording as soon as it is ready. It takes maybe 30 minutes for the system here to process.